Hey guys, welcome back to Concordia Jedi. It's August, time for another Q&A. We got a lot of questions here, so let's get right into it. From Daniel Porter 2887. What if Darth Vader survived Return of the Jedi? Well, watch my videos. I did a series on that. And don't ask for part 3, but maybe stay tuned. From Crusader 2112. Who's your favorite character in the Book of Cassius besides Cassius himself, and why? That's tough. I really like Dravok. He was one of my favorite characters to write for. I really liked his arc, especially in Inner Storm. I think you could say Dravok, but I also really liked writing for Tosa too. You know, having this scummy, cowardly Trandoshan mercenary who by the end of the series is a full-on rebel. I really like that story arc too. So I'd say favorites are either Dravok or Tosa, outside of Cassius. From Moose Lords, if there was a book to be done about Liara after the events of Cassius, when do you think it would be set? Like I've said before, I have some ideas, but I think most likely it would probably be set either 5 or 6 years after Return of the Jedi, maybe a little bit longer. From Don't At Me 420. You've talked about a few what ifs for the Cassius series, but what are some of the weirdest suggestions you've gotten for a Cassius what if? That's tough because I don't receive too many what if suggestions for the Book of Cassius, but I have gotten a few. One of the strangest ones that I got was what if Cassius went to Mustafar using the World Between Worlds, which, while, you know, it's kind of an interesting idea, it's also something where that's not how the World Between Worlds works. It's not just time travel. I'd say that was probably the weirdest one. But one of the suggestions that I have gotten that I thought was weird but interesting was what if Master Takai trained Sarah? And while I'm not sure how Cassius would fit into the story there, maybe he'd be trained by Sindralig. It's also one where I think it could be cool, but I also don't know if I could have a real interesting angle on it. You've brought up some scrapped plots of Cassius that you and the audience are glad never made it in. Are there any you wish you'd gotten to? Yes, so I've talked about some scrapped plot points from Cassius and even 2 whole scrapped books. One that was set between Dawn of War and Jedi Apprentice, and one that was set between Ashes of the Order and Jedi Redeemed. One scrapped plot point that I wish I would have found a way to include, but never found a way, and it just kind of ended up being unnecessary in the long term of the story, was a plot point set during Jedi Redeemed. It was after Cassius was freed from Kessel, and Gaidom tells Cassius that he can't leave Yavin until they've decided that he's in the right state of mind that he can leave. And what Cassius does is he steals a shuttle, and he leaves Yavin, and he winds up getting shot down by pirates over a planet in the Outer Rim that's completely covered in rainforest, swamp, and jungle. He's injured in the crash, and he has to make it to civilization through miles and miles of rainforest and swamp and jungle, all while having to fend off wildlife and dangerous creatures and the elements, and all the while he's badly injured. And there was going to be a plot point in there of Cassius actually being bitten by a snake and being poisoned, and while he's poisoned, he talks to a hallucination of Corbin, who kind of helps him to get out of the rainforest. That was one I wish I could have gotten to. And I'd say that's the major one. There were some other ones that I think, you know, there were some plot points that could have been cool, but overall, I think I'm happy with the story as is. Do you think a friendship between Cassius and Anakin / Sarah and Padme could have prevented Anakin's turn? I don't think so. It's difficult to say for sure that no, it wouldn't have, but it also depends on, how long would they have known each other? And even in that sense, you've got Obi-Wan who knew Anakin since he was a child and started training him. And even then, that didn't prevent Anakin's turn. But in the hypothetical scenario that, yes, Cassius and Sarah knew Anakin and Padme and they all knew each other's secrets, I think that would at least give Anakin someone more to talk to about these kinds of issues and kind of vice versa. But I don't think it would be enough to prevent Anakin's turn. Thank you for your question. From Leo Romer, if Luke, Leia, and Han watched the Star Wars prequel trilogy and the Clone Wars series, how would they feel about Anakin's backstory and why he turned to the dark side? I think obviously, they'd be more understanding about the why, but that wouldn't excuse Anakin's actions and him turning to the dark side and doing all the terrible things he did. I think Luke would probably be the most sympathetic. Leia probably kind of more in the middle. Her eyes would be opened a little bit more as to the why, but she'd still, be incredibly unforgiving about all the acts that Vader did. And Han, I think his opinion wouldn't change all that much. Han, I think, would still be like, yeah, but he became a monster. I don't feel much sympathy for him. Thank you for your question. From Diamond360. So there was this old Star Wars questionnaire back in the day, and I thought I would revitalize the questions here if you were interested. Oh, wow, that's a lot. Number 1, are you a Jedi or a Sith? Jedi. Number 2, favorite planet or planets? Coruscant, Naboo, and Cloud City, or Bespin. Number 3, what is your lightsaber type, color, and fighting style? Single blade, green, probably Form 5. 4, favorite species? That's a tough one. I like Rodians. I think Rodians are pretty cool. I'll go with Rodians. Number 5, favorite ship/vehicle? Probably the Millennium Falcon. That's just always been one of my favorites. Number 6, if you were a Jedi, which master would you want? Oh, that's tough because there's so many good ones. I'd say probably Master Yoda. Go straight to the big guy. Number 7, if you were a Sith, which master would you want? That's kind of tough because I don't really see myself wanting to walk the Sith path, but I guess if I had to choose one, I'd say probably Dooku. He just seems the most level-headed, all things considered. What would your Sith title be? I don't know. I've never thought of that. Darth Crypt, I guess. We'll just throw that in there. Number 9, favorite Star Wars film, Return of the Jedi. Number 10, least favorite Star Wars film, Attack of the Clones. 11, if you could write your own Star Wars novel officially for Lucasfilm, what would you do? I think you know exactly what I'd do. I've got 9 books ready to go, Lucasfilm. Number 12, favorite film soundtrack. I assume this is talking about just the Star Wars movies. Probably Revenge of the Sith. Let's see, what's the next one? Number 13, do you collect figures? Not really. I do have a couple in the box that I keep, stored away, but not to the level where I have like a full shelf. I more collect the lightsabers. Number 14, favorite thing about the EU? Kyle Katarn. Absolutely best thing about the EU. Number 15, least favorite thing about the EU? The Jedi Prince saga. Absolutely hate it. Despise it. And number 16, what does Star Wars mean to you? Star Wars to me is that escape to imagination. Star Wars was the first major series that really awakened my creativity and imagination and made me see not only sci-fi, but entertainment as a whole in a completely new light. And just seeing all the different, realms that Star Wars can work in, it can work in drama, it can work in action, it can work in like a military action format, it can work with something like Star Wars Pod Racer, where it's a racing game. It can work in so many different mediums. And I think what Star Wars means to me is that it's not just a single static story. It's something that expands into multiple realms of all different kinds of creativity. And that's part of what I love about it. Thank you for your questions. From Dark Vortex, who is your favorite and least favorite character besides Cassius in the Book of Cassius? Well, I already said my favorite was probably, besides Cassius, probably Dravok. And then least favorite character, I don't really have any characters I wrote that I hate. But I guess, like, if you wanted me to choose one that I'm like, they just didn't further the story a whole lot, I'd say maybe Tabu from Dawn of War. But overall, I didn't hate him either. He served his purpose. Was Sarah Keto always going to be a part of the story, or did you have someone else before deciding on her? I came up with some early ideas for another female character, but really, like, from the beginning, I was always enamored with, the character of Sarah and confused as to, like, why they had this really cool looking character from the video game only appear in like one offshoot comic and then never use her again. So my thinking was, let's take this character who was basically just put in the game to be a boss and die, and let's give her a backstory and a whole, series to be a part of. So I think from the beginning, I always kind of wanted to do something with Sarah Keto for the Book of Cassius. Thank you for your question. From Skywalker Academy, I'm currently outlining my second book, and I'm wondering, and I was wondering some of the challenges you faced when writing the Book of Cassius. Writer's block has hit me hard right now. Yes, writer's block is definitely a major enemy of mine. I cannot tell you how many times I've had to put something off because I just have severe writer's block. Another thing that happens is I can get burnt out while working on a project where I'm super passionate and I start working really hard. And then as I'm about halfway through and I realize I'm kind of in over my head with some elements of it, I just, sort of get burnt out and I have to take a break from it. So those are the big ones that face me. What helps to me is take a break from those projects, because at the end of the day, you got to remember, you're the one who sets your own deadlines with your own projects. So you are not beholden to any deadline except the one you set yourself. If you feel you need to take a break from it, take a break. Take all the time you need until you get that spark back. That would be my advice. Would it be okay if I use the names Urshan and Roth as fake cover names for two of my characters? Yes, absolutely. If you can find a good way to fit it in, that doesn't just kind of seem forced, I'd say absolutely go for it. Have you thought about writing a story about a Sith? I've been asked this question before in a previous Q&A, and I haven't given much thought to it, mainly because I'm more the Jedi kind of guy. I know a lot about the history of the Jedi and, what they're all about, their philosophy and all that. The Sith, not so much. I'd have to talk to one of my friends about that. He knows a little bit more about the Sith stuff. What is your least favorite lightsaber color? My least favorite lightsaber color, I don't really have one because I think they're all pretty cool, but I guess if I had to choose one, I'd say yellow, mainly because it's just not a very appealing color to me, although it does look really cool, like, seeing it in the Acolyte with Yord. I think it looks really cool with certain characters, but overall, it's just not one I would pick. Who is your least favorite Jedi? Probably Ki-Adi-Mundi. The guy's just a prick. When did you know it was a good time to end Cassius' story? I imagine it wasn't easy. This has always been one of the most important things. I bring this up anytime someone asks me about writing a story. They ask, how did you know it was a good point to, end the story of your character? And I tell them the same thing. You need to know that no matter how much you enjoy your story, how much you enjoy the character that you've made, every good story needs to come to an end at some point. Every character's arc needs to have an end to their journey. And with Cassius, I had come up with some ideas of if I wanted him to live, past the events of A New Hope, past the events of Empire, even past Return of the Jedi, maybe even into, the era of the First Order where he would be an old man. But the more I thought about it, the more I thought the real conflict with Cassius at the end of the day comes down to what happened to him during Order 66 and the cause of all this misery, and that was Vader. And I felt there's only one real logical way to bring the story to the most satisfying conclusion that I can. And so I knew that Cassius' story had to end at a point where Vader was not occupied with, Luke Skywalker and the Rebels and all the events of A New Hope. So I decided to lead the story into the beginning of Rogue One, where we see Vader in the Bacta tank. That's where I knew where Vader's story began with the original trilogy when we first saw him in A New Hope. That's where Cassius' story basically ends. And I figured that even though I could have written ways for Cassius to, live and kind of, ride off into the sunset, just retire basically, I felt it was more fitting to have Cassius meet his end at Vader's hand in a final act of sacrifice for Liara. So that's what I decided. Whenever you're writing a story or a character or anything, it's important to have a layout, of when their story begins and then knowing when you want it to end and how you want it to end. It's very important. Thank you for your questions. From Zack Attack. If you were to choose an author to take the Book of Cassius and turn it into an actual book series, which author would you choose? Matthew Stover, 100%. His Revenge of the Sith novelization is my absolute favorite Star Wars book, and his writing prowess is just off the charts brilliant. So I would pick Matthew Stover. 2. You were hired as a director to make a feature film. The studio will provide anything you need, a huge budget, top-notch technical writing staff, but on one condition: the film you make must be very controversial, and if this is not the most controversial movie of the year, the studio won't even release it. What would your film be about? That is really, really tough. I don't know. I don't know if I have an answer for that. I'd really have to think about that because I'm not someone who delves into controversy too much. I kind of just, live my life and let people live theirs. But man, it would have to be a real controversial film. I'd probably do something in the horror genre, just try to make it as shocking and grotesque and, controversial as I possibly could. But I honestly have no idea what I would do. Number 3. If you had to choose one character from the Book of Cassius that would be transported into real life and would have to live with you until the day you die, who would you choose and why? Oh, I think we all know who I'd choose. Pip, of course. That little rapscallion would be going around having adventures, getting into all sorts of trouble. Absolutely, I'd pick Pip. And that's the last question here, so thank you all very much for your questions. We will see you next time on the next Q&A. Keep an eye out. We got more stuff coming in the near future. We got a few new chapters coming out in this coming week and something big on the horizon. So keep your eyes open. Thank you guys for watching. May the Force be with you.